From edgy jokes to multiple cancellation attempts, Tony Hinchcliffe is no stranger to controversy. But is he actually a good stand-up comedian? Well, in order to come to that conclusion, we're going to have to look at some of the reasons why some people may love his stand-up and why some people may despise it. We'll start off with the good. Tony is incredibly witty and is not afraid of tackling taboo or controversial subjects in his stand-up. This honesty and transparency gives a sense of authenticity to his set, and Tony's ability and willingness to confront sensitive topics gives his comedy personality and substance. When listening to Tony, it doesn't feel like somebody just reciting their ordinary stand-up routine. When Tony's on stage, it feels like you're getting a snapshot into Tony's psyche and his true feelings and beliefs on a certain topic. For some, this can add a personal touch to his comedy that some people can really appreciate. Listening to Tony's stand-up reminds me of listening to a very close and out-of-pocket friend rant and rave about all the things he hates about society. And this could be a potential reason why so many people love Tony's style of comedy. Another reason would be the way Tony deals with hecklers in the crowd. I mean, just take a look.
Is everything okay? Is it the retarded thing? I'm getting a vibe that it might be the retard part that's getting it. Is that a bad word to you? Why are you doing this poor girl? She's miserable. She's having the worst time. I can't imagine that she's always like this. Everywhere she goes her entire life. I mean, in a sold-out room where everybody not only is having a good time, but it appears as though everybody's having a great time. What did you say before worse? Couldn't have been? Your day? Something couldn't have been any worse? Nobody understood it?
Well, she should have researched better who she wanted to come to.
Why? But you're having fun.
Nobody actually likes you on hard.
Work, you realize... Guys, I promise you I have this. But you understand why you would stand out to me if she's facing the other direction in a live show. She's got the parents wrapped around her finger. They can't even control this one. She's definitely in her late 20s at this point. Oh, really? Oh, we got mom standing up for her, so you're all a bunch of morons. This is great. You should be telling your daughter to pay attention to the live show, or you should let her leave. You sitting there being miserable isn't helping anybody. Everyone's having fun around you. There you go. Yeah, do it. Uh-oh, here comes mama. Oh, shit. What are you going to do? Wow, you didn't even grab it. No, let her do it. No, really grab it. Let her. Come up again. Come up. I was kidding about the Nissan Maxima, you dumb bitch.
I'm sure many people absolutely adore how ruthless Tony is. I mean, Tony is a complete savage. You see, Tony gives as good as he gets, and if you heckle Tony during a set, oh boy, it is a rough day at the office. Tony's taking no prisoners. But this extremely cutthroat approach from Tony is one of the main reasons why many people may gravitate towards him. It's worth mentioning that this unforgiving response to hecklers from Tony does contribute to some of the hatred directed towards Tony and his stand-up, but more on that later. Now, it goes without saying that a large amount of Tony's popularity and love comes from the Kill Tony show, but as this is more of a live podcast as opposed to his live individual stand-up, I won't be discussing it in this video. However, I do think Kill Tony is a very unique idea and it is executed very well. I have to say I had a lot of fun with the show, but why might somebody not be a fan of Tony's comedy? Well, that's very easy. It goes without saying that Tony has a very dark sense of humor, and that may be a little bit too much for the average viewer. Tony's willingness to dive headfirst into controversial topics without a care in the world is one of his biggest assets, but at the same time, this style of comedy can be pretty abrasive for some, and Tony's abrasiveness in his comedy could serve as a reasonable explanation as to why so many people walk out and heckle Tony during his sets. We can't ignore that Tony's level of rawness in his stand-up can put a lot of people off, so if you're not a fan of super intense, dark and edgy material, then I'd say you stay well clear of Tony Hinchcliffe. Next up is Tony's dirtiness. Tony is very similar to Joey Diaz in the sense that his dirtiness is one of the main staples of his act, with dirty jokes making up a large majority of his set. And this dirtiness in a comic's act can be heavily exhausting for some members of the audience, especially when it is such a prominent aspect of Tony's stand-up material. Unsurprisingly, this can heavily contribute to a growing distaste towards Tony's style of comedy. As mentioned earlier, Tony's response to hecklers is brutal, brutal, and this can play a big role in people disliking Tony. And for me, this calls into question the blurring of boundaries between a comic and their audience. Initially, I thought this interaction between Tony and his audience was hysterical, but the more I reflected on the situation, I felt pretty bad for the people that Tony was picking on. Imagine you go out to an open mic with a group of friends for a few drinks and a little bit of a laugh, and then you walk away from that evening being absolutely obliterated by the same comic who you went to go and see. It's pretty rough. However, you could argue that these hecklers had it coming to them, and they probably should have just kept their mouth shut to avoid this situation from escalating. But we can't ignore that Tony's cutthroat approach to hecklers can be a massive turn-off for some. This is my first time seeing Tony Hinchcliffe stand up, and I think he's fantastic. Tony is easily becoming one of my favorite comedians for the same reasons I mentioned from earlier. His stand-up kept me incredibly engaged, and he had me howling throughout his stand-up routines. I love how cutthroat he is towards the hecklers in the crowd, and I think Tony creates a very entertaining experience for whoever is watching him. I really don't have anything negative to say about him. Overall, I'd say an 8 out of 10. I think he's a good comic. But if you're the type of person who enjoys balanced perspectives when discussing topics in the comedy world, then click one of the videos on the screen right now.